Hey everyone, we have Nick Hansen, CEO of Luxor Mining. He'll be doing a talk on Hashrate Wars, supplying the bullets, and I'll let him take it from here.
Awesome, thanks. Appreciate it. Give me one sec. Getting some feedback here. I'll just. All right. Yeah, confirm that we can hear real quick. I'm just going to go down to mute. Awesome. Great. So we're going to jump into to Hashrate Wars. So my name is Nick Hansen, CEO of Luxor Technology. We do mostly like altcoin and Bitcoin mining pools, and then some services on top of that. Recently, we've started really thinking about Hashrate as an asset class, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Before I get started, I will do just like a base level of what Hashrate is, kind of how we think about it. Reason for that, I see there's quite a few people that I'm familiar with and know exactly what Hashrate is, but just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So if you Google what is Hashrate, if you just Google it, this is the answer that comes up. It's the number of hash operations done in a given amount of time. That's so simplistic. That's like saying, if you Google what is electricity, it's like saying, well, it's the thing that powers your computer or your car or whatever nowadays. It's so much more intricate than that. There's so much more to it. And I'm going to describe a bit of the nuance, just so that we're all on the same page. So it's ephemeral, very similar to electricity. I'll also be using a lot of electricity and analogs throughout the talk. It can't effectively be stored. Electricity can be stored in a limited capacity, but it can't really be stored for any meaningful amount of electricity can be stored. Say you couldn't power a city off of a battery, at least not with today's technology. Similarly, hash rate is kind of a use it or lose it thing. It has a very short lifespan, and so you pretty much need to apply it as soon as you generate it. It's fluid. It can easily be moved between regions, very similar to electricity. So the electricity that's made here in Eastern Washington is shipped down to California. Similarly, the hash rate that's generated, in a mine in China can be used here in the United States. And then it's commoditized. So hash rate from China is equivalent functionally to hash rate from US, Argentina, Turkey. You can think of hash rate very much like a commodity. So we're going to talk a little bit about the generation of hash rate, the distribution of hash rate, and then more importantly, why that matters. Why that matters to you. So mining is really just these things. This is an S9. This used to be the prototype miner. Now we have this beast here, the M30S. So What's miner, or its corollary, Ant miner, the S19. Why is this important? Well, these actually are the physical devices taking electricity in, doing the programmatic operations, the calculations, and producing this hash rate. And then it goes out into the world and then is virtually distributed via the internet. Most of the generation is done in China. So, the generation of these machines is done in China. What's Miner and Bitmain are the two biggest ones right now. And those are both based in China, as well as they end up getting distributed to China mostly. So then we'll talk a little bit about distribution. I'm sure you've seen this chart, right? Anytime somebody talks to you about hash rate Bitcoin mining, they talk about hash rate distribution and everybody's favorite topic, the 51% attack. So really the idea is that you don't want any one or a combination of these slices working together to make up more than 50% of the network. Ethereum has a similar chart. Maybe haven't seen this one. This one's probably not as well known. And I'm sure you haven't seen this one. This is a Sia coin, which is a very small alternative coin. But what's interesting about this is you can see that each coin has its own distribution of hash rate. But while these are distributed virtually, these pools are actually not very distributed at all geographically. So we have, F2 pool, BTC.com, Poolin, Wabi, Ant pool, OKX, via Pool, via BTC. Those are all in China, and we kind of think that could be a pretty big problem if Bitcoin starts to reach ubiquity around the world the way that we all hope that it is. We need to balance that out, and I think about this a lot. And so I started talking to some of my compatriots here in the United States that are really into mining, and started asking them what they think about it. Now, if I had the chance to give a poll right now, it'd be really interesting to see what people think the distribution of hash rate looks like right now, geographically. Like, most people would probably say, most of it's probably in China, but I don't really know how much. And if you had to guess, say 50%, it'd be a decent guess, but it's actually quite a bit more. The amount of hash rate that's actually being generated in China is probably 65% or more of the current hash rate in the world. And then the US is not even a close second, and then it's actually rather distributed below that. These are all places that have low energy prices, which is the number one factor when trying to determine where to put your mine. But China is just so far ahead because of the distribution of the physical machines. So when I mentioned that I went around and asked some of my U.S. compatriots what they think about the hash rate distribution and how hash rate should be viewed into the next 10 years of Bitcoin's life cycle, they had a lot to say. They actually had a lot to say. So they had so much to say that it actually is going to take 2 slides to show all of this. Really what this is saying, what this is showing, what this is demonstrating is that I'm not the only one thinking about this. There are a lot of people that are thinking about how can we distribute the hash rate more effectively geographically. It's not good enough just to say that it's not at a single pool, or not all at a single pool that has 51% of the network, but we need the hash rate to be generated in different regions. And we think that the U.S. is going to be a really big part of that in the next 5 years. This is continued, actually. So we've got even more quotes from very smart people doing a lot of great work in Bitcoin mining. So that's the problem. The problem is that the hash rate is not very well distributed. But what's the solution? And then why does that even matter? So as I mentioned, we can the network is less secure when the hash rate is more centralized. You can see with the Ethereum Classic 51% attack that just happened. Anybody that controls that much of a particular coin's hash rate can do something nefarious with it. So if you think about if for example the Chinese government decided that that hash rate was that Bitcoin was in some way detrimental to the Communist Party, or they decided it would affect their financial system, or devalue their dollar or something like that, then they could very easily go and grab 3 or 4 people and control the majority of the hash rate, not just the distribution, or not just the generation, but also the distribution. And so that's really that's the problem. It reduces the security of the network, and that's why it affects you, anybody that actually holds Bitcoin, because we all want the value of our Bitcoin to remain relatively stable. We don't want it to, of course, we don't want it to go down. So we need to be thinking about this. This is something that could be an existential threat to Bitcoin. And why do we think that North America is going to play such a large role in this coming redistribution of hash rate? Well, there's quite a few, and each of these could be a topic in itself. We could do a whole talk on each of these different tailwinds, but I'll try to summarize them. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in, and I'll just try to answer them in as we're discussing here. But one, the U.S. has great electricity infrastructure. We actually have or I shouldn't say we have great, but it's better than the rest of a lot of the places in the world. So we're able to distribute the electricity that's required to mine Bitcoin really effectively. Another thing is that machines are lasting longer. Machines used to be antiquated by maybe 3, maybe 6 months. So the first generation of Bitcoin miners were had a life cycle of less than 3 months. Like the jalapeno was dead on arrival, just because the hash rate was increasing so fast. But now the growth of hash rate is slowing a bit. The technology advances are slowing just a little bit. So each machine now lasts a bit longer. But why is that important? Well, if it takes several weeks to get machines from China to the US and they only last for a few months, you're spending most of your time shipping, and you will never ROI those machines. So in the past, people would just go grab them straight from the distributor, plug them in somewhere in China, and then start mining them. But now that they last, 3 to 5 years, like the S9 was almost 5 years long, had almost a 5-year life cycle. You can take out that shipping time becomes much less important. We're also really prioritizing the U.S. market. The distributors are actually prioritizing the U.S. market. They want to expand their growth. They want to be able to sell to new customers, which is why they're prioritizing the U.S. market. There's also many rumors. Shout out to Christy. She really stirred the pot by saying that there's a credible rumor of an American ASIC manufacturer. We hear about it from time to time that there's some manufacturers that are considering making an ASIC in the U.S. There's continued professionalism in the industry, so you can actually go and capture real investment. Before, most investment came via angels, but now you can actually get institutional investment in some cases into mining, which makes it much easier to actually acquire the machines at a competitive rate and get them here. And finally, something that's near and dear to my heart is financialization of hash rate. Hash rate is starting to, as it's becoming more and more commoditized, it's starting to become we're starting to see these financial derivatives built on top of it. So future swaps, purchasing purchasing the mining reward of a particular miner over time, doing difficulty futures, all of these sorts of different ways to financialize hash rate into products that help miners reduce their exposure, hedge some risk. This really lends itself to an institutionalization of mining. That's why we think North America really is going to continue to push this forefront. So we asked around. We asked some folks like, how much hash rate do you think is actually going to be coming over here? As you saw in the previous slides, we think that there's 65% of the hash rate or more is in China now. What's that going to look like if we take 1%? If we add 1%, it has to come from somewhere. So we asked around, and we think that most likely America is going to gain around 10% in additional market share over the next 3 years. If you assume a price of $12,000, which is we're around there right now, that's about a $1.3 billion market that's going to be coming to the U.S. And I think that's really good. We'll see if it does. But you've got companies like Crusoe Energy, Layer One, Hodl Ranch. I had a quote from Jesse there, Jesse at Hodl Ranch. They're all really bringing on a lot of hash rate, and they're going to continue to. I think that's really good for the mining ecosystem. I'm realizing now that I really blew through my slides. I was in my practice runs. I was doing them quite a bit slower. So we actually already have gotten to the questions slide. I was supposed to add a lot more detail to some of the other slides. But I find that talking about this stuff is actually the most interesting part about these presentations. Like, in my opinion, folks, the way to think about this is it's best derived from conversation. So if anybody has questions, feel free to ask them. I'd love to answer them. I'd love to expand on pieces that you thought I might have brushed over. Or if, go ahead and hit me with what you got. Yeah, thanks, Shannon. It's a little shorter than I'd hoped. So I got a DM on Twitter about how this does this affect price? Does hashrate distribution affect price? I don't really think that it, not directly. I don't think hashrate distribution in the US really, it's not going to affect price directly. It's going to be a major component, and it's going to be a major component of the support of the price. So, we all know that the price of Bitcoin is rather speculative, the same way any investment is. But there is some core fundamental value to it. The same way there's fundamental value to gold and other assets that people buy, stocks, all sorts of assets. The more effort it takes to get a Bitcoin, the higher that floor goes. And so I think that as more and more miners come to the US, the hash rate grows. We start to see it take more and more, become more and more difficult for coins to actually be mined, which makes miners feel like they should be selling at a higher price. At the end of the day, the miners are the ones that are actually generating the coins. The coins are coming from any coin that's been sold on the exchange has been mined by a miner at some point in its lifetime. And so if they're the ones that think that price should go higher, they'll really siphon off the sell side demand, the sell side pressure. Zach throwing me a bone. How do we get a major US pool to be in the top 5? Number one, we need to get hash rate into the US, right? So having only what was it, 7% of the hash rate in the world be in the US, you won't be able to get a US pool into the top 5 because there's not enough hash rate in the US. So, I mean, Luxor has a Bitcoin mining pool. We're in like the top 20, but definitely not in the top 5. To get to the top 5, we would either have to go take hash rate from Chinese pools. And if you've ever had to do business in China, you'll know that I will never be able to do that. So what we need to do is get hash rate into the US. And that's it's something I'm trying to facilitate, working on helping folks with. If anybody is looking to get into the hash rate, that would be, let's see. AWS has data center in Mumbai. So yeah, Devdata says, great talk. AWS has a data center in Mumbai. Would be great if we can decentralize to be more countries, and if India can be a part of it. Yeah, so actually India has quite a bit of power generation. They have a lot of underutilized hydroelectric dams, which is where most Bitcoin mines end up being built, at least today. And I do think that India will be a part of this next generation of mining. India would be a great, it's a low cost area. You would be able to get, you'd be able to get a lot of get mines set up for rather cheap. So, yeah. And of course, thanks Tarun for mentioning the ban. They ended up lifting that ban as well. And so you would be able to put in mines in areas around these hydroelectric dams. And one of the pieces of detail that I forgot to mention was that these Bitcoin mines actually help the electric system quite a lot. So think about they're actually doing this. Actually, there's a lawsuit filed about it for patent infringement, but they're doing this in Texas. This is what Layer 1 is doing. Layer 1 and Lancium. We'll let them determine who's the first to have done it. But what they're trying to do is they're taking these Bitcoin mines, putting them in between the power generation and the city. So the problem with power generation is that it is not very elastic. You can't ramp up power generation or ramp it down very effectively. But the way that they're utilizing Bitcoin mines is to put them in between the city and use them as like effectively a negative battery. So the Bitcoin mine, so you have a power plant that generates 1,000 megawatts. You have a city that requires 800 megawatts. You put a Bitcoin mine in between that uses 200 megawatts. For scale, a 200 megawatt Bitcoin mine is a very, very big facility, a massive facility actually, and it would take up that 200 megawatts. But then if the city required an extra 100 megawatts, you would just power down the Bitcoin mine by 100 megawatts and then let that power flow through. And so now you have like negative demand on the grid. So you don't ever have to worry about these rolling brownouts like New York. New York, California currently is having rolling brownouts. Places where the electrical grid is not as robust would do very well to have Bitcoin mines in between the cities and their power generation sites. And we think that that's going to be a big part of expanding the electric grid. We think that long term, electric generation, utilization, and distribution are going to go hand in hand with Bitcoin mining, maybe specifically Bitcoin mining, because those things are so tightly coupled. There's a way now for latent energy to be utilized. What's the pool payment frequency? Luxor's pool, we pay out once an hour. But some pools pay out differently. This is a whole topic for another talk, but some pools pay out once a day. They use something, most pools nowadays are doing what's called PPS, pay per share. We pay pay per share and we pay out once an hour. Some pools pay once a day. Some pools pay out once you reach a certain threshold. We try to add enough features that people can get whatever they want. That if you want to get paid out once every day at a certain time, or you want to get paid out if you reach a threshold, or you have some combination of those two logic gates. Back to India. It's actually there in December, and there are a lot of people in India, and I think that there's a really underutilized human capital that could be deployed to building and using Bitcoin mines, and really effectively ramping up the electrical grid there in India. Let me think. What else do we got? No other questions right now, but can expand on any of these other talk. There's been a lot of, back to Zach's question, there has been quite a lot of talk about getting a US based pool. I know there's Novablock. They're building a pool. They're actually kind of large now. There's a couple of other companies that are building North American pools. And like I mentioned, we just have to get more hash rate into the US to really make them viable. I think it'd be good. I mean, one of the use cases that I view for Bitcoin being long Riot, they have American mines. Yeah. I don't know if they have pools though. Riot does have quite a lot of hash rate here. I don't know if they have pools though. Back to the use case for Bitcoin, I think that international remittance is going to be one of the big use cases for Bitcoin in the next 5 to 10 years. Say, a government paying another government, say $1 billion. Like right now, that for international remittance, that's like nothing. $1 billion going from the U.S. sends Israel $1 billion a couple times a year. Eventually, I view that will be done with Bitcoin as that becomes a very liquid and easy mechanism for transferring large amounts of money. It starts to become a matter of national security, and that's why we think that getting US-based hash rate is really, really important. I'm coming up on the end of my time here. I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to sit through and listen. If you have any questions, feel free to hit us up on Twitter. We are very active on Twitter. Our Discord is also very active. We talk a lot about mining, mining support, that sort of thing. And yeah, really looking forward to hearing from you. DevData, we do Bitcoin, and we do like 13 others. We're the largest North American Zcash pool, Horizon, Pirate Chain, Komodo, Scicoin, near and dear to my heart. Sci Classic, Sci Prime, all sorts of different coins. But most, we're really focusing on Bitcoin right now, and really the financialization of Hashrate, which I spoke on just a bit ago. I think that the financialization of Hashrate is going to be a very big aspect in getting miners into the U.S. The reason we think that's so important is because we've talked to lenders that want to give loans to miners, but they're unsure if those miners are ever going to be able to pay them back, right? So that's part of the credit worthiness check, or part of the credit worthiness requirement would be that they take out some short position on hash rate. Well, right now that's not really possible, but long term, as Luxor starts to build out our product features that we have on the roadmap, those will start to become possible. You'll be able to take out a short on hash rate effectively, which may make it more tenable for lenders to lend into the mining space, which improves the liquidity, makes us more viable, and allows us to buy more miners, get more hash rate in the US, which allows us to get more loans. And it's really this network effect that really starts to become that really starts to bolster the U.S. mining economy.
Thanks, Nick. This was a really great talk.
We're going to I believe that's it for me. Sin, I don't know if you're still listening, but
yeah. So we're going to transition to the next talk now.
I appreciate